I came to Australia to escape everything that happened to us. I ran away just to be able to start a new life without a constant reminder of the pain that we'd gone through. So I don't remember an awful lot of my time at uni. The day of my last exam, I got on a plane, came to Australia with no intention of staying long term. I came on a one-year visa. 2 days after I arrived, I got on a boat to go and look at great white sharks, and I never left.
Oh, that's Cowgirl. So hopefully we'll be able to get a tag in her.
No matter what I did or where I ended up, Mum would always have been proud of me and Tanya. All she wanted was for us to be happy. And, you know, I'm very happy with the life I've forged for myself here in Australia.
When I was in my teens and my 20s, I never thought that I would get to this age. I remember my mum telling me that my family don't live beyond 40. So achieving my 40th birthday was a celebration, so to speak, in itself.
No. He's not having it.
I could have allowed myself to fall back into that dark place, but I've managed to get out of it, and I enjoy life now. Being a mother is just wonderful. They light up my life.
Tanya's definitely struggled and been through an awful lot of heartache. I ran away and started a new life, and she wasn't able to do that. And she got left with picking up a lot of the pieces on her own. So, you know, she's an amazing woman. We were never told any history about the family at all. So it wasn't until my father died, and that's when we were going through the bureau and found all the old newspaper cuttings, and that's when we realised that there was a whole background to this story of what had happened to Thomas.
Belfast, Mary, den 29. Oktober. Lieber Hans, wir haben euer Band erhalten und haben uns wirklich sehr darüber gefreut. Bevor wir aber euer Band beantworten bzw. von uns erzählen, möchte ich euch erstmal ein irisches Volkslied vorspielen.
Sure, there's one per county in Ireland.
Belfast, the capital of that odd-shaped corner of the United Kingdom which lies outside Great Britain. Ulster had a job being born a tall, and she's been struggling for survival ever since. The unemployment rate in Northern Ireland now stands at 8%. Something drastic had to be done to lure new employers over the water. 180 new factories have been established in the province already. Some have come from the continent, like this Grundig plant, the only one of their dozen or so factories built outside Germany. At the beginning, there were 16 German technicians here. Now there are only 6, one of whom is the general manager.
When we opened that box, a hidden history emerged. The boss of the Grundig factory in Belfast was our grandfather, Thomas Niedermayer. He'd started as an apprentice, and he'd worked his way up from the shop floor in Germany to become a manager. He was also the German honorary consul in Northern Ireland. Thomas and Ingeborg, our grandmother, moved to Belfast with their daughters Renate and Gabrielle. The family soon settled into their new home and their new life in Northern Ireland.
Aber ich glaube so, wir waren schon so oft am Meer und es war auch oft schönes Wetter, die Sonne hat geschienen. Aber wenn ich mit den Füßen ins Wasser reingegangen bin, ich bin wieder rausgegangen, ich habe gefroren. Das Wasser ist hier so eisig.
Ja, waren sehr glücklich. Sie hat der Bruder von meinem Mann. Naja, weil ich habe ja gesagt, der deutsche Konsulat und der Direktor von der Grundig-Werke. Ne? Und da waren wir alle sehr stolz drauf.
I could honestly say it was the happiest years of my career as a secretary. Mr. Niedermayer was a good boss. A good boss, but he had a sense of humour, you know. As I say, you would have thought he was on skates when he was going out, you know, and sharp as a razor. I mean, he had plans for nearly up to 5 years at what he was going to do and how the company was going to progress.
I first started here when I was only 16 years of age in 1969. And your grandfather met me, along with my parents, to discuss my apprenticeship way back in that time.
Wow.
Thomas, your grandfather, would have been held in the very highest regard, and perhaps even by me, with a slight amount of fear. As you approached his office, you would have seen the German consul sign outside his door. You would have thought to yourself, there's a very important man in there. He's not to be messed with.
Northern Ireland at that time, there was a massive scarcity of work. Over 2,000 people were brought into a plant and were able to get a living. And the two sides of the religious divide, both were helped. It wasn't a case of a Catholic company or a Protestant company. It was for the workers.
September 1970, I met one of my childhood best friends. He said, I've discovered the provost, and I'm going along tomorrow evening to be sworn in. And he said, will you come with me? On the spot, I said, yeah, I'll come with you. Yeah, I mean, exciting. One moment we were exhilarated and excited to be, you know, secret agents of the IRA at 15. The next minute, they were threatening us. If you give any information, or if you squeal on anything, or if you tell anybody, you know, we'll shoot you dead.
I grew up in Derry City. I really always wanted to get into the police, but I had no idea what lay ahead of me, obviously. I thought it was a passing thing of troubles. I would just become a normal policeman. But during those first 2 years, I was the first officer at the scene of 12 sectarian murders.
They just came in firing. The people, there was no provocation whatsoever.
Firing what, rubber bullets?
No, it was lead bullets they fired.
I was in Radio Television, and a bomb went off, and the whole building shook. Then another bomb went off, and then another bomb. And bombs just were going off.
It's 3:20 in the afternoon, and for the last 20 minutes, Belfast has been rocked by the biggest bombing offensive seen in the city this year.
The summer of 1972, it was a terrible, terrible summer of slaughter, of mayhem, of butchery. Northern Ireland was teetering on the brink of civil war as a consequence of a very concerted IRA campaign against the state. The Protestant population had responded with paramilitary activity of their own, and between them, they had caused complete chaos.
The bus station was crowded when a bomb went off without warning.
I met a member of the IRA Army Council. He said, we're in for a 20-year war, and at the end of the war, this will be a wasteland, but it'll be our wasteland.
There is so much more to my grandparents and my aunt and my mother than I ever knew.
Our granny, Inga, came from East Prussia in northern Germany. In 1945, it was overrun by the Soviet Red Army.
In a rare moment of disclosure, Inga once told me of her ordeal as a teenager in 1945. To escape the advancing Russian army, she was put on a refugee train.
Terrible atrocities took place, mass murder and mass rape.
She lived amongst the dead and dying on that train for 6 months while it was shunted all over Germany. 8 members of her family died in that conflict. And then she met Thomas, started to make a life for herself, become a wife and a mother.
Habe ich sie auch nicht so kennengelernt, erst wie sie dann verheiratet waren und dann wie auf Irland halt gekommen ist.
Irland gefällt mir schon recht gut, aber weißt du, wenn es manchmal tagelang regnet und es will nicht aufhören, da verwünsche ich manchmal auch Irland. Und wenn dann die Sonne lacht, dann denke ich gehe von Irland nicht mehr fort.
Gabrielle, who we knew as Gabby, was our mother, and she was the eldest daughter. Her younger sister was Renate.
Renate and I were friends from pretty early on, from primary school. And really what got us together was our love of horses. And she was absolutely fanatical about horses and adored them. Animals came first. She would run to rescue any animal. We couldn't have been more different, but we actually became just great friends. She had a big sister. We used to think she was fantastic because she had makeup and she had nice dresses and she wore nice clothes and she had a boyfriend.
Well, I first met Gabby when I was 13, when I went to boarding school. I was a boarder and she was a day girl. And she had a lovely, calm dignity, sorry. She was very dignified, almost like sort of Princess Grace in a way, that she moved and dressed, and very easy to be friends with. Gabby's father, Thomas Niedermayer, he was a lovely, calm, very gentle-looking man with kind eyes. I remember his eyes. And he had Gabby's calm, gentle aura.
Start of March of 1973, 10 IRA volunteers were sent over to plant 3 car bombs in London. After they planted their car bombs, they fled to Heathrow Airport.
They were subsequently arrested in 2 groups at London's Heathrow Airport.
Now, these 10 operators were very important to the IRA. Marion and Dolores Price, 2 prominent young activists who were highly regarded.
They were all convicted, but the Price sisters wanted moved to a prison in Northern Ireland where they would have special category status. But the British government said no, so the girls went on hunger strike.
I knew a fair number of lower-ranking IRA people, and they were quite nice. Some of them were very nice. But the leaders were monsters.
In 1973, for the IRA Army Council, the Contact House was a sweet shop owned by 2 spinster sisters. And in their kitchen, Army Council people just had tea in there and met there, and I met Brian Keenan there. And I was introduced to Brian as the Quartermaster General of the IRA.
We are strongest in adversity. We're going to win this struggle, and the quicker our enemy realizes it, the less slaves will be lost.
Keenan was the single most important person in the IRA.
We believe he visited certainly Libya, and he had a personal audience with Colonel Gaddafi and obtained a promise and a supply of arms from Gaddafi. He had actually worked in Grundig, and he had been a shop steward when Niedermayer was the general manager.
Brian Keenan wouldn't be a man that I'd want to have been in the company of too often. There would have been aggravation. A couple of times, Mr. Niedermayer more or less told him just leave the room.
Brian Keenan was one of the most magnetic people I have ever met, and I've met a few. In his company, you knew this man would do anything to achieve his ends.
Brixton Prison, London. Inside these walls, Dolores and Marion Price are dying.
On one occasion I distinctly remember, I arrived at the sweet shop. The room had a pall of intensity about it. I could clearly see in a few moments that the entire IRA Army Council had become transfixed by the plight of the Price sisters. We were entering a phase where the first kidnapping was going to be authorized by the IRA Army Council. The PLO had kidnapped sports persons and murdered them. You know, ETA were pretty good at kidnapping people.
VIPs are hard to get because they're all so well guarded in Northern Ireland at that time. But here was Niedermayer living up in West Belfast. And best of all, he was the honorary West German consul to Northern Ireland.
Well, we were off school. It was Christmas. We wouldn't have visited Christmas Day or Boxing Day. I went up the next day. During Christmas, Renate's mum had gone into hospital. Renate was there, she answered the door, and she brought me into the kitchen to make me tea. I thought her dad was maybe in his study because we weren't going in there to watch the big TV. And then I came home early in the evening and
It was a few days after Christmas, late at night. The only ones at home were Renate and Thomas. And then, according to police reports, the front doorbell rang, and Renate went to answer it.
The kidnapping was all the easier because the seizing of foreigners here is a new type of crime.
And I'm listening to the news the next morning, and it come up that Mr. Niedermayer had been kidnapped. Well, I nearly had a heart attack.
You know, a British ambassador is hard to get at, or judges that all a form of protection, security. Niedermayer was living among the people. And why shouldn't he? He was providing employment for the people. He was a good man. But a good man was a soft target.
Herr Niedermayer's wife was back home today from hospital, reluctant to be photographed. She was still bewildered by her husband's disappearance.
Die Tatsache, dass ein sehr angesehener ausländischer Geschäftsmann in Nordirland ist, hat dazu geführt, dass dieser Fall mit großer Besorgnis von der Bevölkerung und den regierenden Kreisen in Nordirland und in Großbritannien aufgenommen worden ist.
Wir waren alle fertig, wir waren alle geschockt. Hat mehrere geweint.
The police and the security forces are still keeping an open mind about the case. But as the hours pass and no word is received from the kidnappers, there is increasing concern as to exactly what has happened to Mr. Niedermayer.
Mr. Niedermayer had disappeared and nobody was saying what had happened. You know, there was a great lull of mystery and worry.
But as time goes on, of course, it gets more and more distressing, and one cannot be absolutely certain at this time. But I sincerely hope that the man is still alive.
On the 27th of December, my husband Thomas was taken away from me and our daughters. Please do him no harm. He has never harmed anyone. Please let him come back to me. And at the very least, please let him get in touch with me or allow him to give him a sign of life. I am waiting for him day and night.
I can imagine some of the stories that came out in the news during that time of uncertainty would have been very, very hurtful.
The behavior of the press, and I include myself in this, was appalling.
There was a theory that he was an arms dealer.
I was contacted by a German journalist, Boris Galasch. He told me the theory now was that the IRA had nothing to do with the abduction, that Grundig believed it was not a Republican abduction, that it was a loyalist abduction, and I believed it. I ran a story in The Observer saying that German authorities now believed it was no longer an IRA kidnap, but a loyalist kidnap. Galash genuinely admired the IRA, and I suspect he was doing what the IRA wanted him to do by causing people to look at the UVF. And by using me in the Observer, they found their useful idiot, and I was a useful idiot.
There was the theory that he had had an affair and run off with another woman.
This was a scandal. It was in every damn newspaper that there was. I was being followed. There was cars flying down the road. I was actually going halfway through lights to get on the other side. I was in the supermarket and I was behind these two ladies and they were criticising that secretary's away off of them. So I tapped them on the shoulder. I said, I'm this lady you're talking about. Do I know you? I tell you, it's a wonder they didn't drop dead in front of me because they had been really going for me.
Well, what do you think yourself has happened?
I just don't know. It's something I can't understand. It's never happened before, and you just don't know what to think.
Do you think there is a possibility that your father is still alive?
Yes, certainly. Until he's been proven dead, I will continue to believe that he is alive.
How has your mother stood up to this period of anxiety?
Well, I think she's gone through it very well. At first, we were all very confused, and we didn't know what to do, but we've managed to get things organised, and I don't know what we would have done without her.
If the worst has happened, do you want information about this?
Yes, certainly. Anything just to let us know exactly what has happened, one way or the other.
I've never heard my mum's voice like that before. She just comes across as very strong, but really wanting answers, really wanting to know what's happened. So yes, of course I'd want to know, but we'd just keep on living our lives until we do. That's really brave of them, I thought.
After her father's kidnap, she was very stoic. She kept her pain inside. But I remember her telling me very excitedly that she'd met somebody and he was rather special. He was a lifebelt to a drowning person, something she could reach out to and hope for a future for herself.
Less than a year after Thomas disappeared, my mum and dad were engaged. I know that there were concerns about the security at their wedding. There were fears that the IRA might actually target the whole Niedermayer family. And then on the eve of the wedding, there was a shooting nearby.
An IRA man was accidentally shot with his own gun, only a mile from where they were being married. This created quite a lot of paranoia as to why that man was there and whether he had been sent there to enact something at their wedding.
When Robin and Gabby got married, we knew the date of the wedding, but we didn't know the time of the wedding. So we only got an hour's notice because they thought that Robin and Gabby could be targets for the IRA. So I do remember that we had secret police protecting us around the wedding.
Keenan was almost a mythical figure, a bogeyman for the Provisional IRA. He was a hard edge that could convince people to do his bidding, and that bidding was usually going out murdering somebody. He didn't give one fiddler's fuck about victims. It's as cold as that.
Brian Keenan couldn't keep away in wanting to be at the scene of London bombings. He could then talk about abroad. Yes, I was there. I saw our heroic bombers at work. He couldn't keep away.
I have put myself in Inna Borg's shoes to try and see how she might have felt, to always be looking over her shoulder, wondering if she was going to see him. I can't imagine the number of scenarios she would have gone through in her head.
Ja, ich habe sehr verändert. Und die sah nicht mit den Schicksal, sie fertig waren.
I'm told that she was psychiatrically assessed, and in that assessment, she confirmed a genuine belief that her husband was still alive. And she carried that hope for so long.
Throughout the 1970s, the police continued to search for my grandfather.
Would it be fair to say that this is the strongest tip you've had since Mr. Niedermayer disappeared?
No, it's one of a number of tips that we've had, yes.
But nevertheless, the previous scraps of information haven't resulted in you cordoning off areas and bringing in 75 police officers and dogs specially trained to look for bodies.
That would be so.
He was on the high wanted list as being in charge of the England bombing team. He was flown by RAF plane. He was considered of such importance. He boarded London and charged.
For 7 years, the family waited and waited and pled for information about my grandfather.
I always had an interest in cultivating legends. One particular interviewee told me there's a man you should be interested in. He keeps a very low profile, but he's a very important man. We gave him a code name, Disciple. So I took Disciple down to Springfield Road. He said, look, I am heavily involved in the IRA. I drank regularly with the commander of the IRA in Andersontown. And somebody would raise up the question, well, whatever happened to Niedermayer? He would say, don't worry about him. He's down a hole. And he's digging himself in deeper. What do you mean he's digging himself in deeper? And I say, yeah, he's buried face down, so he can dig himself in deeper. Where is he? Just beyond the bridge to Clonglen. That was 1 mile from Thomas Niedermayer's home, and the whole of the province was on alert, road checks everywhere, and all the time he was just a mile from where he was kidnapped.
If a group of men come to your house and none of them are wearing masks and they take you away, in my experience, you're not coming back. There was never any chance of that man being released.
We set up a conservation organisation. We named it the West Belfast Environmental Action Group, and we got a grant to clear up Clonglen. Dead animals, old fridges, mattresses, and I said, how are we ever going to find a body in all of this? As the weeks wore on and more rubbish disappeared, now the rats were starting to appear. The weather was horrendous, almost constant rain. I was becoming more and more anxious because this is a big operation. On the first day of the 4th week, no sign in the body. My heart was starting to sink, and about 2 o'clock, 2 of the other guys were down watching the bucket. One of them shouts out to me, Alan, halt, halt, we've got him. And I ran down, and there was a pair of cavalry twill trousers with bones sticking out of them. The very last afternoon of the very last day, we have found what we've come for. And guess what? He was buried face down.
The discovery has given rise to speculation that the body may be that of Thomas Niedermayer, the German industrialist who disappeared after being kidnapped in December 1973.
Well, there has been that speculation, and it could well be the body of Thomas Niedermayer. We'll not know that until we get it positively identified.
We had trouble getting a positive identification because we couldn't trace any dental records. Now, this is a photograph in better times of Thomas Niedermayer. So the pathologist came up with this brilliant idea. He got his technician to make a transparency of the portrait of Thomas Niedermayer, showing his very distinct teeth. He then superimposed that upon the skull. They matched up perfectly. That was positive identification now that we had the body of Thomas Niedermayer.
And it was the saddest day when that happened. To me, it was the biggest shame that Northern Ireland had.
Mein Mann und ich sind wir nie weggeflogen. Mit dem Grundig. Das war der höchste von den Grundigberge. Und ich lass dich nicht allein, ich geh mit. Da sind wir halt nie weggeflogen und waren wir dann auf die Beerdigung.
You, Lord, are all I have, and you give me all I need. You will show me the path that leads to life.
I asked Disciple, had he known whose brainchild this whole Niedermayer affair was? Oh, he says yes, it was quite widely known at the time. Brian Keenan, it was his brainchild. And it would have been a masterstroke if he had managed to get the Price sisters moved to Northern Ireland. We arranged with Scotland Yard for us to get into Brixton Prison. So Brian Keenan is produced. I would ask questions, and Keenan would just stare back at us with venomous eyes. It was clear he was absolutely dedicated to the cause, and we were just a bit of a nuisance. I think he probably gained more from it than we did, because he said nothing. During our interviews, Disciple told me John Bradley was involved in it. John Bradley was a small-time player. You might have sent him out to hijack a car or something like that, but you wouldn't bring him into a big job like Niedermayer.
Specific to the Keenan case, you look at one of the suspects, Bradley. Once you get into the cold light of day and you have two people in front of you, and all of a sudden you're confronted by the brute reality of what you did, people talk.
He says, out of the blue, I got a knock at the door and saying, look, we have a major operation and we need someone to act as a jailer. And I was showing up into this house in Hillhead Crescent, and there was Niedermayer. I knew right away who he was. On the second night, Niedermayer was quite calm. He was in a small bedroom, only the lights from an open electric fire. But one time he asked to go to the toilet, and when he got around the hallway, he made a break for it. Three of them managed to get him and haul him back up into the bedroom. He says, but he started to scream. We were starting to panic. So we got him onto the mattress on the floor, and still he was screaming. And he says, one of the gang had a 9mm Browning, and he clubbed him twice in the head with it. And he says, gradually, Niedermayer went limp, and he was dead. We also learned that when Keenan was up for the operation, he was very much on the run, and one of the houses he slept in was the house of Eugene McManus. Eugene McManus was the adjutant of the Belfast Brigade. When we interviewed McManus, he told us that this whole operation against Niedermayer was Brian Keenan's brainchild, and now it's gone terribly wrong. If the rest of the IRA get to know Keenan made such a foul up, bad for reputation. So it was he was insistent that everything be kept close and the body be taken away and buried secretly, and it was never to be mentioned again.
Two Irishmen had been jailed for their part in the kidnapping and death of the West German industrialist Thomas Niedermayer in 1973. John Christopher Bradley, one of the men guarding him, was today sentenced to 20 years. The second accused, Eugene McManus, who admitted helping the kidnappers and belonging to the IRA, received a 5-year sentence.
Thomas Niedermayer's life and death meant nothing to the people who brought it about. That's what they did. The IRA produces death. Thomas Niedermayer was a victim of that death cult, and so was his widow, and so was his family.
For me, this is discovering more about my family, more about what they went through and the people they were. I'm outside the house that my grandfather Thomas was taken to after his kidnap. This is where he was murdered. The people who live here now had nothing to do with it, and it is on a quiet family street. It's not an abandoned, boarded-up building that you could imagine such horrors happening as someone being held hostage. And it's surreal that I'm here now, looking at the place that he was held, that he fought, and that he was killed at.
Not long after Thomas's funeral, Ingeborg moved back to Germany, to Bamberg, Thomas's hometown.
Granny Ingeborg, I can only ever remember as a very small, timid lady who just seemed incredibly sad.
There was a lot of love between her and my mum, and they did used to talk in German to each other, so none of us knew what was going on or what was being said.
The fact that Granny Ingeborg would come back here, even after the house was sold, and just sit on this bench time and time again, over and over again, is just so sad. It feels that she was stuck here. This is the moment, this is the place that their lives changed forever. Thinking about grandfather and my grandmother and Renate and my mum and the turmoil that they must have all gone through on that day just breaks my heart. Without me even knowing it, it's overshadowed my life.
In June 1990, Ingeborg went back to Ireland.
This seafront hotel in Bray that she and Thomas had been to and enjoyed and had fun. She'd clearly planned it extremely well, remembering those happy times.
Tragically, Mrs. Niedermayer committed suicide by walking into the sea.
Die ist mit dem Leben nicht mehr fertig geworden. Nein, ja.
It's terribly sad that she decided that that was her only option. Renate loved animals, and I think her animals took the place of friendships. I cannot imagine the pain that Renate would have felt on being the person who opened the door. In the years after the kidnapping, it became clear that she had developed an eating disorder. She went a long way away. She moved to South Africa. While in South Africa, she worked as a volunteer in a refuge for wounded and abandoned animals. And that's where she died in 1992, from organ failure related to bulimia. To me, that is a form of suicide.
Those who say the war is over, I don't know what they're talking about. The revolution can never be over until we have our country, until we have British imperialism where they belong, in the dustbin of history.
His nickname was the Dog. That's how intelligence services referred to him. He was like the Rottweiler of the provisionals.
I interviewed a lot of Republican agents down through the years. A lot of them talked. If Adams turned up at a meeting, everybody sat there. If Mark McGuinness turned up, people just sat there. If Kane appeared in the room, everybody upped the attention.
My mother was the kindest, most gentle. Sorry. There was always a sadness there, but she was 100% dedicated to me and Tanya. There wasn't a single point where you didn't know that she loved you completely and that her life she dedicated to giving us everything she possibly could.
I remember coming home one night and Dad said that Mum had disappeared.
She said she was going into town to do some shopping. The next day, her body was found in a car in a field. Thomas's kidnapping, it absolutely shaped my mother's life and the choices she made and her overall happiness with her life. So she left a whole stack of cards and she wrote us hand letters. Some of the page, the words have run because there are tears on the page as she wrote this letter to me. She said, I know that you're capable of great things with your life. Remember that I love you so much, that this letter is the hardest thing I've done in my life.
Her letter to me essentially said, I'm sorry, but you understand why this is necessary, and I love you, but it's clear that my life is no more, so it's time to end it.
Thursday evening, my very last letter of all, and it's written to both Tanya and myself. I just want you to know that I love you. Please grow up as ladies, let nothing stand in the way of your chosen careers, and above all, be happy. Remember, I will be with you always.
Because it strikes me as what I mean, like a surrender. Well, there will be no surrender, like.
Keenan was advisor to McGuinness and Adams throughout the peace process. Everything that the British government offered Adams and McGuinness, they had to go and run it past Keenan. If Keenan said it was okay, the rest of the IRA would say it was okay.
His support for the peace process, for Sinn Féin's peace strategy, was crucial and pivotal.
It's a complete fantasy to say that Brian Keenan became a man of peace. What he realized was that the armed phase of the war was over and they could continue their campaign against the Northern Ireland state by subversion, by lies, by dishonesty.
My mum died in '94, and that loss affected my dad, Robin, so horrendously. And in '99, my dad killed himself. And that is a further effect of that kidnap of Thomas on his doorstep. So he is just as much a victim as the rest of the Niedermayers.
Brian Keenan, the former leading member of the IRA, has died in Belfast today, aged 66.
Keenan didn't want a traditional church funeral. His wish was that his body would be cremated and his ashes scattered from the hills above Belfast.
Family, Sinn Féin and IRA members took turns to carry the coffin.
For someone like Keenan, when he passes, the world wants to capture it. This great patriot of Ireland who fought the Brits and dedicated his life to this noble cause, and you'll have his victims, like Thomas Niedermayer, who are absolutely, utterly forgotten. Could he not have told the truth? Was it so difficult to turn around to the family and say, this is what happened? We did it. And you know what? It was wrong. And we're sorry. There's none of that.
My name's Tanya. I'm one of the two grandchildren of Thomas Niedermayer. My sister was only 14 when our mother died. She was 19 when our father died. And that is the legacy. That's the multi-generational trauma that has been caused by the decision to kidnap Thomas. That cycle of trauma and
guilt and grief of being the ones left behind shouldn't define our continued existence. My children, they know about what has happened to our family, and they have some understanding of what has happened. And my hope is that my children will help us break this cycle, and they are going to lead prosperous, loving, happy lives, even with that awareness. Thank you so much for listening to me.
The damage that's happened to our family has to stop at myself and Tanya. I don't want to see it trickle down into the next generation. I don't want to see any of our children's lives impacted any further. My mother's death was just a crushing blow. I think it's not until really I had a child of my own that I really appreciated how much you still need your mum, even through adulthood. To be able to travel to Germany and meet the family that we never knew we had is very exciting. So Tanya and I always used to have this thing in our head that we would never live past 40. We're both past that, luckily. I don't think we're special. I think there's plenty of people out there who have far worse things happen to them than what has happened to our family, and they're able to survive and they're able to overcome and not be victims of what has happened to them. So I absolutely know that for Tanya and I, we can overcome what has happened to our family.